We've been talking about witchcraft. This is the fourth video in this series. We talked about Deuteronomy 18:9 through 13. Um, let's go next to Leviticus 19. Leviticus 19 is a very interesting passage. It's talking about when you have a nation of Israel that is following Torah, which will happen in the millennium, okay? Then what's going to happen is that you're going to have a society that tempts you towards righteousness rather than having a society that tempts you towards sin. And so in our history, what we have seen is nations that tempt you towards sin. And we're living in one. But in this chapter, he's talking about what does it look like to have a society that is tempting towards righteousness? Well, one of the aspects of that is that you cannot have witchcraft, because witchcraft is exactly that. That is the temptation system to move you from righteousness into evil, right? From God's kingdom into Satan's kingdom. So you have to remove witchcraft. And that's what there's a section in here that deals with witchcraft because of that. So this is Leviticus 19, and it starts in 26. You shall not eat anything with the blood, nor shall you practice divination or soothsaying. And these are the words that we've been using here from Deuteronomy 18. You shall not round off the sides of your head, nor shall you destroy the sides of your beard. This is talking about shaving the side of your head or shaving your beard in order to change the appearance that God gave to you. and this is what witchcraft is all about. Witchcraft is trying to get you to do something different than what God wants you to do, right? You shall not make any cuttings in your flesh for the soul, or tattoo marks on you. I am the Lord. So again, these are things that are going to change the appearance that God gave to you. Do not prostitute your daughter to cause her to be a harlot, lest the land fall into harlotry and the land become full of wickedness. Now, and then you shall guard my Shabbats and fear my holy place. Do not turn to mediums or familiar spirits. Do not seek after them to be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. So he's got all this witchcraft stuff, but right in the middle of this thing, he's got this thing about harlotry. Well, there's no such word as harlotry in the Hebrew. They have a general word for fornication. Whether you're making money at it or not is not the issue. The issue is that you're fornicating. Okay? So that's the general word in the Hebrew. And that's what we see in our country. Back in the 60s, we came up with this idea of free love, right? And so since that time, fornication has been acceptable in this country. Prior to this, it was not acceptable. Okay, you would get in trouble if you were fornicating. You're not having sex outside of marriage, that is a problem. But now it is acceptable. And what he says is that it becomes wickedness. Now the word wickedness here Actually is our word zima, which means a genetic deformity. In other words, it causes us to have a problem in the next generation. And this is exactly what we see in this country. Because of the fact that fornication was okay in the 60s, now we're getting into all kinds of perversion. You know, the homos and uh, every kind of perversion that you can think of. Okay, they are continuing to add numbers to the homo definitions because they are getting into greater and greater wickedness. In other words, fornication led to this. Okay, it was a genetic flaw that caused a deformity later on. And what he's saying is that witchcraft, if you allow witches in your society, say, oh yeah, we're going to have freedom, right? If you allow that, then it will cause problems. They will bring you out of the kingdom. They'll get you more and more evil, more and more evil, and more and more evil. Okay? You shall guard my Shabbats and fear my holy place. So again, witches use fear. They try to get you to be fearful of objects, fearful of something physical. Get your eyes on something physical. This is your reality. But God says, no, your reality should be my holy place, the place where you are intimate with me. That is the place that should be your reality. Okay? And witchcraft is designed to pull you away from that. And by spending time with God intimately and making that more real, we're insulated from witchcraft. Okay, so that's another passage that deals with witchcraft, and you can see that this is really emphasizing this idea that witchcraft is the devil's evangelistic system to convert you from God's kingdom to his kingdom, to convert you from righteousness to evil. All right, let's talk about security. I believe that everyone should go into the military. This is what the scripture says. Every male between the ages of 20 and 50 are supposed to be in the military. The military teaches you all kinds of good stuff. I realize that there's a lot of problems in it and so forth. But there's a lot of good stuff in it also. One of the things that we have classes on in the military is security. We have, the enemy wants to target military facilities, and they want to get information about those military facilities so that they can target them. Okay. Now they get spies from foreign countries will get information from a lot of legitimate sources, newspaper, whatever, right? But they also try to target people that work on the military base, and so we have these classes on recognizing this problem. So if someone is talking to you in a bar and starts up a conversation, if he ever asks you anything about your job, you're not supposed to give him any information, because the slightest piece of information could be the last little piece of the puzzle that the enemy needs in order to target whatever facility he's trying to target. Okay, so they teach you. You don't tell them anything about your job, nothing. Because it doesn't matter how small a piece of information it might be, it may be just the thing that he needs. And we have this problem going on today. Facebook comes along, and Zuckerberg, he says, these guys are stupid for giving me all this information. Now this guy has a free program that people go in and use for free, and now he's one of the richest billionaires in the world. How is that possible? How do you make billions and billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars in giving away a free program? Okay, it's because of the information. He gets all that information, goes into the AI, they make targeted ads, and they sell a lot of stuff to people. Okay? But what are they doing? When you are on Facebook, you give all your little bits of information, right? And it sounds innocuous, right? But the AI is now controlling your life because it knows all this stuff, and it's putting it all together. So we have the similar problem with security in a lot of different ways in our society. We need to think about this. Spies, okay? So Facebook is a spy, basically, okay? Now there's two kinds of spies. You got the kind of spy that is getting information, and you got the kind of spy that is a saboteur, okay? Now let's turn to 2 Samuel 15. And let's talk about Hushai. Okay, 2 Samuel 15, verse 32. Now, what's going on here is that Absalom has revolted from David. And David is running for his life. And he's running up into the mountains. And he's gathering a group of people who are going to be his counter force to try to get the kingdom back, right? And as he's going, he runs into this guy named Hushai. Verse 32, now it happened when David had come up to the top of the mountain where he worshipped God, there was Hushai the Archite coming to meet him with his robe torn and dust on his head. David said to him, if you go on with me, then you will be a burden to me. In other words, Hushai was one of his advisors. Okay? He had two advisors that are mentioned in this story. One is Hushai, and Hushai wants to stay with David now that the revolt has happened. The other guy, the other advisor, his name is Ahithophel. And Ahithophel has decided to go with Absalom. Now the problem is that both of these guys are very smart guys. They're older guys. They know a lot. David had enough wisdom to know that you get older guys to advise you because they know a lot of stuff. Okay, so so what he says is that you're going to be a burden to me. In other words, the guy is an old guy, so if he goes with him, he's going to slow him down, right? But there's something that Hushai can do for him, and if we continue, we're going to see what he's going to do. Then you will become a burden to me. Verse 34, but if you return to the city and say to Absalom, I will be your servant, O king, as I was your father's servant previously, so I will now also be your servant. Then you may defeat the counsel of Ahithophel for me. In other words, he's worried about Ahithophel. Ahithophel is a very smart guy, and he's going to be giving Absalom very smart advice, and David is going to have a problem because of that. So he sends Hushai in as a spy to counter the advice of Ahithophel. So if Ahithophel says one thing, Hushai is going to have to say something different in order to make that happen. And then he talks about the courier system that he's already got in place. And do you not know that Zadok and Abiathar are priests with you there? Those are spies that are already in place. Therefore it will be that whatever you hear from the king's house, you will tell to Zadok and Abiathar the priests, Indeed, they have with them 2 sons, Ahimaaz and Zadok's son, and Jonathan, Abiathar's son. By them you shall send me everything you hear. So he wants him to get information, but he also wants him to sabotage. So the information is going to go by these spy couriers to David, but the sabotage is where he's going to throw in a little zinger in order to get Absalom to do something stupid, okay, so that David can win. Now, Hushai has a real problem because Hushai, as a spy, he wants to appear to be a loyal follower of Absalom. But he also wants to give bad advice and tell Absalom that he's to do something bad, something that's stupid, something that'll get him in trouble. Okay? Well, if you do that, if you tell him something bad, then he's going to figure out that you're really not on his side, right? Unless you do it very, very subtly. So a spy who is doing sabotage, he has to be very much in appearance as one of the good guys, one of the insiders, one of the people on your side. And he has to put in a very, very subtle, targeted zinger very seldom. Okay? Most of the time, he's giving good advice. But every once in a while, you've got that zinger in there in a tactically important place where it's going to do a lot of work for David. Okay? Now, the same thing happens in churches. I understand, I've been told that there's a witch in every church. Well, what do we know? We know that Satan has his demons targeting everyone who's growing spiritually. So in every congregation, if there is anybody in there that is growing spiritually, you know, a lot of congregations where there's not, but there's some congregations where people are actually growing spiritually. He's got his people in there in order to throw in that zinger. But they look like an upstanding member of the congregation. They're very meticulous about appearing to be the great pillar of the congregation, right? But every once in a while, they're going to throw in that zinger when it's tactically important to push that person from God to Satan's kingdom. And he's going to do it in a very, very subtle ways. And he's going to use these principles of the different types of witchcraft in order to do that. It's going to get you to think, instead of thinking spiritually, to think physically. Oh, it's the object. That's the problem. You're having problems because of that object. You need to burn that. Okay? Now you're thinking physically instead of spiritually. Okay? All these different principles. Let's think about New Testament without the Torah. Get rid of that Torah stuff. Okay? That's been done away with. Okay? These kind of doctrines have been inserted into the church by demons. They put that thought into a human being. That human being puts that thought into a theology book, and now it's in churches. Got to get rid of the Torah. Okay? Get rid of spiritual thinking. This is all physical, you know. There's various different ways of neutralizing spiritual growth. And we need to recognize those things and recognize the people, whether they know it, some of the people who are doing this stuff know it. Their purpose is to destroy spiritual growth. I had a lady in a class who finally admitted that the reason she was in the class was to protect everyone in the class from me by getting them to not believe anything that I was saying, right? So she admitted that her purpose was to do that, okay? So I've seen this stuff, and then I've seen other people that they're just dupes. They are connected to somebody that has a demon, or they have an addiction that is opening up a door to Satan. All these different ways that people have an open door to a demon, and the demon comes in and throws in a zinger every once in a while when it's tactically important. So this is spies. Let's turn to 2 Kings 6 now. 2 Kings 6, verse 8 through 9. 2 Kings 6. The king of Syria was making war against Israel. And he consulted with his servants, saying, My camp will be in such and such a place. Verse 9. And the man of God, that's the prophet, sent to the king of Israel, saying, Beware that you do not pass this place, for the Syrians are coming down there. What just happened? The Syrians were attacking Israel. They're motivated by a demon to do this. And God threw in a supernatural spiritual gift of knowledge that these guys were over there through the prophet in order to protect Israel. What does this tell us? This tells us that if we get close to God, He will give us His supernatural gifts in order to protect us from these things. We also need to have wisdom. Understanding these things helps us to be able to recognize them, okay, when they happen. When you have someone in the congregation who is over and over is putting in zingers, this should alert you. There's a demon working through that person. We need to address this and get it fixed, not just let it go on. Okay? So you got all these problems. So there's all kinds of applications of this stuff. It happens all the time. We are being tempted to get out of spiritual thinking, out of spiritual growth, and go into Satan's kingdom in all kinds of different directions. And this happens all the time. And this is going to help us to recognize when it happens. And when we recognize when it happens, then we're going to use spiritual warfare against it. So when you get into the Philippians level, then that is where we're going to learn how to do spiritual warfare against the demons. And in the meantime, we need to be prayed for protection. We need to be alert. We need to be concerned about security and recognizing this kind of open door and get these open doors closed. Okay, so that gives you the information, a little bit of reflection, a little bit of discussion, probably is in order at this point.